Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you.
Mizmor David, Adonai Rohi lo echzor, binoteshei arbitzeini, al menuchot yinaleini. Nafshi shover yanacheni v'mavel tzedek leman shemo gam ki elech begetz al mavet lo irara ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha heima yenachamni ta'aroch lefanai shochan neged zorerai tishanta v'shemen roshi kosir evaya ach tov achesed yedefuni koyem lechayai v'shavti beit Adonai le'orech yamim.
Chazan Pomerantz Boro has begun our service in memory of Norman Siegel with the familiar words of the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He guides me on paths of righteousness. He revives my soul for the sake of God's glory. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod do comfort me. You set a table in the sight of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall abide in the house of the Lord forever. With each passing hour, we come to realize how fragile this life truly is. With each passing day, we consider how blessed we really are. We stand in awe of God's love that allows us to grow. We wonder what we have done to deserve such graciousness. But in the end, our lives are indeed but a passing breath, and all that will remain is the shadow of where we once stood. So we pray to you, dear God, teach us to number our days, give us the wisdom to realize what truly matters most. Help us to remember that integrity and honor are eternal. Our decisions today will shape the memories of us in the future. Those whom we have loved, though now hidden from view, continue to guide our lives when our values mirror theirs. When we have difficult decisions to make, we call on them. When we need love and support, they are with us still. For as long as we shall live, they will live too. They are forever a part of us as we remember them. But people, it is with heavy hearts that we come together to pay tribute to the memory of Dr. Norman Siegel, a man I have long respected and admired. 27 years ago, when I came into this community, Carol, you and Norman were amongst the first to welcome me, to make me feel at home. With his keen mind and gentle spirit, your husband has touched more lives than any of us will ever know, but none of them more profoundly than those of your family. And today we will hear from Meredith and from Lily as they share their unique perspectives and give us insight into the way this wonderful husband, father, and grandfather has shaped your lives. Meredith.
When I was 9 years old, I remember driving with my family to Ponzio's for dinner. My father took a shortcut that passed some very small homes, and I recall saying, in a rather snooty fashion, "Who would live in such tiny houses?" With that, my father stopped the car, whipped his head around, and sternly replied that he never, ever wanted to hear me speak like that again, that there was nothing wrong with those homes, that was how most of America lived, and that I should show respect to everyone, regardless of their material wealth. It was a pivotal moment for me. The lesson, one of many, stuck, not just because of the gravity of his words, but because of his own actions behind them. I watched how he governed himself, how he treated people, and I learned. My father came from humble beginnings. Born in Brooklyn to working-class parents, his family moved to Trenton shortly thereafter and acquired a grocery store where my father was put to work stocking shelves at a young age. My grandmother used to say that Norman was a good boy, always worked hard in the store, always wanted to pitch in and help. I am certain his appreciation for people from all walks of life began during this time. His work ethic carried it over into school, and at only 8 years old, he knew he wanted to be a doctor. He never wavered from that goal, graduated first in his class from Trenton High School, from Franklin and Marshall College, and then from medical school at the University of Pittsburgh. He had illustrious beginnings, rising to the level of captain in the U.S. Air Force in Fort Worth, Texas. While serving, he developed a first ever regional hospital oncology program for that branch of the military. Upon completion of his service, he went on to build his hematology oncology practice. My mother recently shared his curriculum vitae with me, and frankly, I was blown away by the number of honorary positions and medical staff appointments he was given, and published articles he authored and co-authored whose titles I can't even pronounce. In writing this, I really struggled with how I could possibly capture the essence of a truly great man in just a few pages. And it came to me that to know my dad, you really only need to understand 3 facets of information. The first is his character, the second is his career, and the third, and most importantly, is his love of family. I gave you a taste of my father's character from my initial story. He used to pull me onto his lap when I was very little and say, "Mary, your word means everything. Without your word, you have nothing." Being honorable and trustworthy was of supreme importance. If we got caught in a lie, it wasn't good. You had to be accountable. He wasn't interested in blame or excuses. He wasn't as concerned with the initial problematic behavior as he was with how you handled yourself afterwards. He also taught me to be careful with my words. His favorite poem was by Emily Dickinson. "A word is dead when it is said," some say. I say it just begins to live that dead. Words matter. Words can comfort or they can harm. My father wasn't a funny man or a jokester. He was thoughtful. He was a great listener. He asked good follow-up questions. He was measured in his speech and wise in his responses, and he was my sounding board. I remember when I first began practicing family law, we would meet every morning for breakfast at like 6:30 a.m. at Herman's Deli, and he would listen to the stories of my cases and give solid professional advice. Whenever I was experiencing a conflict, he was my go-to. He even gave me advice on how to gently turn down a guy I wasn't interested in. He was principled, and he taught me how to live by a moral code. My friends joke that I can't even tell a little lie. It was this internal code of conduct that governed how my father developed such a successful medical practice. What started out as an office of one grew to over 150 employees. For those of you who knew my dad professionally, you will recall his demand for excellence in quality of care. The first statement of his fundamental practice philosophy was, "Compassion does not increase the cost of the overhead." He was the doctor who gave his home phone number, who made house calls, who worked through the weekend and late into the night, sometimes staying by a patient's bedside all night to provide the comfort they needed. My mother kept boxes of cards my father received from patients and colleagues. I was reading through them the other night. "Dr. Siegel, I owe my life to you. Dr. Siegel, you are an extraordinary person and physician. You have shaped my career. Dr. Siegel, when you held my hand in the hospital, it was like holding the hand of God." He cared so much. He wanted his patients to have all the comforts innovation could bring. And that's probably the thing I remember hearing the most, his insistence upon creativity in the workplace. His practice philosophy went on to state, "We can think of nothing more detrimental than a lack of creativity and negative attitude towards progress. Flexibility and change are a necessity for continued growth. To stand pat is to fall behind. This cannot be tolerated." He expected everyone in the practice to have creative ideas. I remember trying to explain to him that not everybody possesses creative genius, that you do need worker bees to execute a visionary's plan, but he wasn't buying it. The creativity made his practice extraordinary. The Center for Cancer and Hematologic Disease instituted an outpatient ambulatory infusion program with portable pumps so patients didn't have to go to the hospital for treatment. They created an in-house pharmacy to prepare all chemotherapy and supportive care drugs. They brought gynecologic oncology under the wing of the practice and even created their own radiology center. They enhanced the patient experience with meals, a keyboard player, a harpist, and a caricaturist. He founded the South Jersey Oncology Network as an independent, community-based medical oncology independent physician association and was its first president. The innovation was never ending. Even when relaxing on a vacation, my father was always scribbling thoughts on a yellow legal pad. His mind never rested. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention how much he loved and respected the staff. They were his second family. I do believe the feeling was mutual. At his retirement party, my father turned to me and said, "Mary, do you think I made a difference?" I was shocked. I now realize this was a product of his humility. He didn't seek notoriety and was often surprised by praise. I told him, "Dad, if you haven't made a difference through your career, I don't know who has." It was through that career that my father was able to give his family the most beautiful life. And that's where we come to facet number 3, his love of family. My dad admired the hard work of his parents, was extremely close to his grandmother, Bailey Berkowitz, and loved growing up with his brothers, Larry and Saul. He was always excited to get together with their families, and I have warm memories of shared holidays, especially Hanukkah, Passover, and Thanksgiving. I think my father's life really began and ended with his soulmate, best friend, and true love, my mother. The story of how they met makes me smile, as my father was supposed to be set up with someone else at a party. He didn't care for that woman, turned around, and bumped into my mom. 4 months later, they were engaged. He embraced the warmth of Lillian and Walter, my maternal grandparents, and surmised that this was the perfect family into which he should marry. My parents had a love affair to envy, truly. I remember when I was in college and they took a few of my friends out for dinner. We were all looking at our menus when all of a sudden my father put his down, took my mother's hand in his, looked directly into her eyes and said, "Carol, you look beautiful tonight." I kept right on reading the menu because this was normal for me. But when I looked up, my friends were in complete shock. They said they had never seen that before. And that's the way it's always been. My mother was the center of his universe, and he did everything in his power to make her happy. Together, they enjoyed a life most people dream of, full of fun, happy times, with family and dear friends, and lots of travel and adventure, local and abroad. Marshall and I were so lucky to be in his orbit. He was the most loving, attentive, and supportive father. There isn't time enough to list all the ways in which he was there. When I was very little, my dad used to leave for work at 4:30 a.m. I asked him why he never came to my room to say good morning. He said it was too early. I asked him to do it anyway. And for years thereafter, he would come in at the crack of dawn, kiss me good morning, and then leave. Fast forward to young adult. I recall getting called to the bench to argue my first motion in Camden County Superior Court, looking towards the creaking courtroom door, and lo and behold, seeing my father walk in to hear oral argument. He created special days with my brother at obscure comic book stores because that's what gave Marshall pleasure. There were so many wonderful vacations that he treated us to, from which special memories were formed. During my divorce, my parents insisted that the kids and I move in for a little while so that we would feel nurtured. I recall coming home very late from a date one night with Gary, and my dad was awake in his robe, waiting. Bear in mind, I was 45 years old. He said, "Mary, we need to have a curfew of 1 p.m. Your mother and I cannot sleep until we know you are home safe." I couldn't be angry. It was the cutest thing. But of all the wonderful times, of all the memories, nothing compares to the arrival of Lily and Mitchell and Lily. The sun rose and set on the two of you up to his last breath. Mitchell, Papa literally moved mountains for you, and he wouldn't have wanted it any other way. He adored you from the moment you were born embraced your interests, and made you his top priority. I hope you will hold close to your heart all the fun weekend trips he and Mom arranged for you to broaden your horizons and expose you to new things. And of course, the cruises you went on with them, just them and you, that took you to Italy, Spain, Croatia, and France. Then, Miss Lily was born, and Lil, you rounded out the perfect set of grandchildren, a boy and a girl. You were a firecracker from day one, and Papa reveled in it. He was proud of your many accomplishments and loved watching you dance and cheer. He was always in attendance at your character awards and enjoyed taking you shopping for dances. Remember the day of chocolate he and Mom planned for you, and the trip to New York City you had with them after you turned down Paris, which I still can't believe. More recently, he was so proud of your admission into the Kogod School of Business at American University. He knew that you inherited his business prowess and was thrilled to hear about your goals for the future. Both of you inherited his creative streak, and I know that you have all of Pop-Up's goodness, love, and strength in you. Towards the end of his life, as he battled this disease, the thing that kept him going was treasure time with family. And that family included his caretaker, Manny. Manny, we are so appreciative of all you did for my father and our family. He loved you, and we recognize that it is because of you that we were able to enjoy the quality of time that we did.
Daddy, there's so much more I could say. You were heroic, and you were my hero. You were the quintessential role model, and the most incredible father a girl could ever ask for. You were my best friend, my confidant, and the man I could always, always count on. The best of me is because of you and Mom. I love you with all my heart and will miss you so deeply. Rest in peace.
Great, Miss Lily.
When I look back on the past 19 years of my life, a very special man and a very special relationship jolts out at me. I was blessed to be Dr. Norman Siegel's granddaughter, something no one else has the privilege of saying. You know, in this world, we don't choose our family. We don't get to sit down and look through a book of grandparents to pick from. It's really just the luck of the draw. Lucky for me, I won the lottery. One of the earliest memories I have with my papa surrounds a sleepover at my grandparents' home. I was probably 5 or 6, and my brother and I had formally been invited to a fun-filled sleepover on Ann Drive. Mitch was so excited to go, and he hopped right out of the car. For some reason, I was petrified of leaving my mother. So much so that I made her drive up and down Springdale Road until she nearly kicked me out. Once I started walking in, I was greeted with such joy by my mama and papa. Taking me by the hand, they were thrilled to spend quality time with just my brother and I. It wasn't until bedtime that I had felt at peace. I remember sitting in my bed and my papa walked in. He took a seat right next to me and pulled out a story. He held my hand, gave it a squeeze, and proceeded to read. My papa provided me with such comfort, and his voice was so soothing that from then on I never wanted to leave. How I wish I could hear his voice or hold his hand just one more time. Just as a little girl, I was able to get a glimpse into how he cared for his patients with such individualized care. If you knew my grandfather, you know the effect he had on this community. Wherever I go, I get stopped. People tell me how grateful they are for Dr. Siegel, that he saved their loved ones from cancer. Papa, you have touched so many individuals' lives and have never stopped lighting up mine. Thank you for being so gentle, kind, loving, generous, and supportive. My grandfather was the most selfless man I've ever known. He was the type of person that would put everyone else's needs before his own, and it's something that I've always admired about him. He was my biggest cheerleader, literally, as he would cheer on the cheerleaders when I was in middle school and high school. He would support me at every dance recital, and nothing warmed his heart more than to come to my various character education ceremonies. I thank my grandfather for always being there and wanting the best for my brother and I. He was such a proponent of high-quality education, coming from very little, and living life to the fullest. I was fortunate enough to be taken on such fun family trips, meals, and other experiences, all of which will stay with me for the rest of my life. For 5 summers in a row, my grandparents took my family and I to Cambridge, Maryland, a place where we have such fond memories over. One night, I was sitting on the hotel balcony with my papa. On his lap, we watched this beautiful Indian wedding take place outside on the lawn. He was just in awe of the ceremony and the love that these two people had for one another. I saw his face light up, and he started to tell me about the love he has for my beautiful mama, Carol. Nothing warmed his heart more than to hear Nothing warmed my heart more than to hear how lovely or how highly he would speak of her. And this was something I had experienced all my life. The love my grandparents had for one another is untouched. It was more than just saying, I love you, every day. It was shown through action and through honor. I feel so grateful to have been able to watch such a beautiful marriage, one that I can only dream of having one day. Mama, Papa adored everything about you. And while he is no longer here with you physically, I have no doubt that he is here watching over you, protecting you, and will always love you. Don't forget that. When I got home from camp this past August, I was told by my mother and grandmother that my papa was no longer communicating verbally, and not to be upset when I walked in to greet him. As I said hello and grabbed his hand, his eyes widened and I could tell that he was listening. I said how much I've missed him these past few months, and he responded with a faint, I missed you too, and I love you. I couldn't help but start to cry because while he wasn't having a verbal exchange with anyone, he did for me. As I go through my life and embark a career of my own, he will always be on my shoulder. As my mother mentioned, I want to be just as driven and innovative as my papa was. He will always be my biggest role model and inspiration, and before he passed, I said, Papa, I'm going to make you so proud. And I'm going to be that badass businesswoman that I have always dreamed of becoming. And continue your legacy of hard work, moral character, and the love that you have for our family. With that, he gave me a very tight squeeze, and I knew he heard me. Papa, I've had the honor of being your granddaughter and standing beside you. The bond we have created will stay with me, and I feel blessed to have known such a kind-hearted and brilliant man. I was very lucky to be so loved. Rest peacefully. You will always hold the most special place in my heart.
If the purpose of a eulogy is to give comfort to those whose burden is sorrow, then surely, Carol, hearing the words of your daughter and your granddaughter here today have certainly lifted your spirits on this sad, sad day. With loving hands, your husband shaped the lives of his family, and his patients, and his fellow physicians, and the entire community and beyond. And his impact is going to be felt for generations to come, not just in your home, not just for your family, but for countless others. As you heard, and all of you likely know, Dr. Norman Siegel was a man of impeccable character, immense integrity, and a relentless inner drive to give everything that he had to anything he was doing. And he did it all with tremendous humility, never drawing attention to himself, never looking for the accolades of others. You know, all of us have dreams, and dreams are lovely. But for many, and maybe even most of us, dreams are just that, just dreams, fleeting, ephemeral, an inspiration for a moment or two. But dreams do not come true just because we dream them. Dreams only come true when we work hard to make them happen. And it is that hard work that changes lives, changes the world. Well, from the earliest days, Norman was willing to put in that hard work to make his dreams come true and to make this world so much of a better place. And I am certain, Larry and Saul, that you knew early on your brother's inner drive to be his very best and to give his best to everything that he did. And the three of you were so lucky to have hardworking parents who were an inspiration and a role model for all three of you. And I know how much you three brothers and your family loved one another. And I hope that the memories that all of you have shared together as a family, with Carol and hers, Norman, that they're all a source of comfort for you, that you can look back on the closeness that you shared and take strength in the memories of all that he meant to you. Surely one of Norman's dreams was to find that perfect partner in life, and Carol, that was you. It didn't take Norman very long to figure out that you were the one. In fact, like you shared with me yesterday, he would have been married a couple weeks after you got engaged. But your mother told him, I only got one daughter, and she's going to have a beautiful wedding. I need more time. But it still didn't take too long. And in September of 1966, this true life partnership began. And that's exactly what the two of you shared. You know, Carol, as we reminisced yesterday about all of your earliest memories of the time together, every single one of those memories ended with either smiles or out-and-out laughter, because the two of you shared so much fun, really from the very first time that you met. And yours was a relationship that was based on mutual respect and admiration. And you heard firsthand how your children and your children's children speak of the love that they saw you and Norman share. You drank deeply from the cup of life. You were able to enjoy so much. You devoted so much of yourselves to one another and so much to your loving children. And Marshall and Meredith, you know how lucky you were to be raised by parents as committed to one another as yours were to each other and to the two of you. Their love is the bedrock on which this family has been built. Your dad made sure to always be home for dinner, even if it was later than most other families ate, because he had to make his rounds. And then he'd head out afterwards. But Marshall, it was very touching yesterday when you pointed out that even as a child, you knew that if your dad was super busy, he was never too busy for you, for your kids. In fact, if he had to slip in dinner at Ponzio's, I was happy for you just to be able to be by your father. But something that you said really touched my heart. You said that your dad respected, that you respected, as Meredith spoke of, your dad's devotion to his craft, to his art, to his profession. And you put it succinctly when you said his goal was to increase the quality of people's lives at every stage, but we never felt slighted, and we never felt that his love for either of us was sacrificed for his career. And that's the truth. Indeed, for both of you, your dad's love was selfless and unconditional. He only wanted what was best for the two of you and always encouraged you to try your best. And he was so proud of both of his children and would be so proud, Meredith, of the tribute that you gave to your dad here today. And at the same time, the same can be said of both of you, Mitchell and Lily. Your papa loved you with every fiber of his being, and he was so proud of his grandchildren. He pushed you to try new things and to step outside of your comfort zone, and he was with you every single step of the way. He devoted his life to you because he knew that each of you, both of you, have unique potentials, and he just wanted to foster and bring out the best in both of you. You spoke so beautifully, Lily. He was so proud of both of you. And that's why when you were out together, you had to have the talking dinners. No phones. You had to be fully present, talk about issues that mattered. No need to waste time. All the time that you were together was precious and meaningful. And I know that his loving spirit lives through both of you. As you heard, Norman wanted to be a doctor from the time that he was a child, and everybody who was his patient or even just knew of his reputation knows that he was an exceptionally good one. Yes, he had an incredible work ethic, but it was above and beyond that. He had the Siegel to read the charts before he came into the room, to look the night before, to understand everything about the patient, so that when he went into the room, he wasn't gathering information. He already understood what there was to be known. He just wanted help. He wanted to help others understand how to move that process forward. That's no substitute. There is no substitute for that kind of hard work. It is impossible to truly say the number of people who Norman Siegel's hands and heart, his keen mind, have touched. Because if you think about it, it wasn't just the patients, it was the patient's family who benefited from that quality of life, and then their children and their grandchildren and everyone else who was in contact with them. They all benefited from the love and the nurturing professionalism that your husband gave to every single person in his care. He knew the best way to do it. He had a vision and he was worked hard to do it. He even brought in a concierge from Las Vegas, someone who was an ace at making people feel comfortable, to train his own staff how to make people feel more comfortable in what would have otherwise been a very sterile and cold environment. And at the most trying times of their lives, he took the rough edges off and he made people feel good and hopeful and cared for. He brought a sense of humanity to everything that he did. And as you said, Meredith, it didn't matter about their wealth or their health or their social standing. He had respect for the dignity of every single individual, and with quiet dignity and strength, he persevered. And as a result, countless lives have been made better. Carol, anybody who has ever met the two of you just had to look at the two of you to know how deeply in love that you were. And together, I heard about it yesterday, you got to travel the world. There aren't many corners of the earth that the two of you have not experienced together with laughter and good times. And you never took any of that, not 1 second, for granted. You knew what a great gift it was to fall in love with and to marry and to spend your life with Norman Siegel. But I also know that these last few years were challenging. Challenging because his illness was debilitating a body even as his mind and spirit stayed strong. But Norman never complained. He never wanted to be the center of attention. He certainly never wanted any pity. And yet, you all rose to the occasion. It was your honor, Carol, to do everything you could to make your husband feel safe and secure and cared for and loved every single day. And truly, being with you was the best medicine, because he treasured every second that the two of you were together. And I know how grateful the family is to you, Manny. I know how heavy your heart is today as well. But they're grateful for everything that you shared over the years with Norman and with Walter too. And I also know how you, the rest of the family, rallied around him and continued to express your love and devotion until his final moments. Before Norman passed, he had loving words. He couldn't necessarily respond, but he heard his brothers' voices, and it meant a lot. And he heard his grandchildren, and of course, he was surrounded by the love, inundated, of his soulmate, of you, Carol. And he knew in his heart, even if he could not express it in words, I know this man well enough to understand that he knew that his heart would be forever intertwined with all of yours. And nothing can separate that. Nothing can undo that. For he has made an indelible impression in all of your lives. The goodness, the character, the integrity, the honesty and sincerity that made Norman Siegel such an amazing person lives on in all of you. So live fully and love deeply, and you will continue to be inspired and carry the blessings of Norman Siegel into this world for generations to come. So we pray Tehei Nishmato, Tzur B'Tzur Chaim, that Norman's soul be bound in the bond of eternal life, and his memory be a blessing in your hearts and in your homes forever. Amen. Following our service here today, interment will take place at Locust Wood Cemetery. Chazan Pomerantz-Borough will be leading a minyan in Norman and Carol's home this evening at 6:30. And then I'll be the family will be receiving tomorrow and on Sunday from noon till 4 p.m. So please now, I ask that you rise for the memorial prayers.
שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות גירושים הטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, et nishmat Nachman ben Martin shehalach le'olamo megan eden temenuchato ana bar harachamim as tireh beseter knafecha le'olamim וזרוע בזרע חיים את נשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום המשכבו, ונאמר אמן.
O God, exalted and full of compassion, we pray that you grant perfect peace under your wings to the soul of Norman Siegel, who has gone to his eternal home. Master in mercy, we beseech you, search the hearts of those who are in attendance here today and countless others, for in them you will find countless acts, testimony of the countless acts of kindness that Norman shared as he graced this, the land of the living. May his soul thus be bound in the bond of life eternal. May he rest in peace. And together we say, Amen. You may be seated.
Will the pallbearers please step to the center aisle? The last, if you can rise once more, please.
Place your hand on top of the chest and walk alongside, please.
Yerushay the Seitreyo, the Shaddai Lana, Marla and I must you, Sudati Afto. You hear Silka Mitaki Fushmi Deva Kavod, Evertaya Sakla, the Kakanaka Texa, Sina, the Silka Rabito, Lothira Mitaka, Island, the Kenchi of Romam. We never will be able to get if you shoot so around you pull with Sid Patella, Ram Yanaka, Ilaka Loigash. Rakbe Neka Tabi, Shula, Rishim Tiraki, Ata, and I Masioyo. Samto Neka Lotu, and Eleka Raha, the Lega, Nega Loi Crumble, Neka, Kimalak Labi, Savarak, Lishmakava, Kaka, Atapai, Nisonka, Pentigo, and Ragleka. Ashaka, the Pepen to go, the North Field, the